Welcome to the show with no name for Friday, March the 21st, 2014. It is the first full day of spring, and I'll tell you, it is so balmy out there right now. I just can't stand it.
You'd hardly know it's a spring day.
Yeah, the vernal equinox.
Yeah.
You know, if we didn't have a vernal equinox, we wouldn't have Easter, because Easter is figured from, wow.
Yeah.
I was in court once, and I was a judge, and the lady is testifying, and she says, something, such and such happened on this particular Sunday, and she says, oh, I can't remember what the date was, but it was the first Sunday after Easter this year. And I said, well, the court will take judicial notice that the Easter falls on the Sunday following the first full moon after the vernal equinox.
She said, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, I see your alma mater equated themselves quite well the other night.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize they were in it till the game was over.
They played well yesterday. They put up a good fight yesterday.
Well, it was like, it's like the last Jap on Tarawa. They put up a good fight, but in the end.
But they played well. They kept it close in the first half, and they just, the other team was better. They were more athletic, and I think that proved to be their downfall. But they did well. They did well. You should be proud at your alma mater.
Yeah, I am. And they said that was the first win they ever had in the NCAA tournament, and I said that can't be right. And then because I remember everything was going great in that UConn game. They were about to knock off number one in the nation, I think, at the time, right?
Yeah.
And everything was terrific until I walked into the room. I remember they had it on the big screen at the Irish American Club. Everybody was hanging around.
Yeah.
I went down there, and they were ahead. Reasonably comfortably when I walked in the room, and went straight downhill from there. I didn't see a decent play for the rest of the game.
No, they just couldn't get over the hurdle. But they did well. Did well this time.
Okay, Siena not in it, or
Siena didn't make it this year. No, Manhattan was the representative from the MAC.
Yeah, and how'd they do yesterday?
They got beat.
Did they get beat?
Yeah. They got beat by Louisville.
Wow.
Last night.
Yeah.
So
I saw Dayton knocked off Ohio State.
Yes,
Holy mackerel!
By a point, and I think Mr. Orapello is very pleased because he's an alumni of Dayton.
Is he really?
Yes,
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Congratulations, Tony Orapello. You've had a pretty good year so far.
Yeah. I picked. They have a pool where you choose teams. Who's going to beat who. Just nothing big. And I chose them. I also chose Harvard, and Harvard won yesterday too.
Really? You had Harvard as well? That was a pretty big upset too.
Yeah. But they won last year though, Harvard, and they're kind of like the old Princeton teams used to be. They're very methodical, but they're a lot more athletic. And there's Tommy Emiker, who's the coach of them, and he's recruited some athletes who are also intelligent, which you have to be to get into Harvard. And
Bill Bradley played for Princeton, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah. Yes, he did. He got them. I think they got to the Final Four of the year. He was All-American. But the field was a lot smaller back then. They started out with only 16 teams. Now you start with
64 plus.
664 plus. Yeah. Try to include more teams for
what do they
greater
have?
revenue.
4 extra teams to play in, or 3?
No, there's actually 8 teams. Because there's 4 playing games now.
Really? There's 4 playing games.
Yeah.
And are they playing for the 63rd and 64th spots?
No, not anymore. Originally, when they had the playing game, they were.
Now, this is why I don't bet. You really got to know what you're talking about.
There were 2 games that were playing for the 16th seed, and there was a game for, I think, the 11th seed someplace, and someplace else for a 12th seeded spot. I don't know how they picked those, but the idea is to include more teams, more enthusiasm, more revenue,
right?
More TV money,
right?
So that's their.
Well, I gotta say, it is the most exciting sport playoff there is.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, first of all, college basketball is far more interesting than the pros to begin with because these guys are playing for their futures here. You know?
Yeah.
And you know, it's a much faster paced game. Nobody looks like, well, I got to save myself today because I got to play another 20 games after this one. No, they're going out. It's do or die.
It's one and done.
One and done, and there's so many of them, and so many good teams, and and good coaches.
Sure.
Anything can happen.
And it's a chance for a lot of these guys to get exposure that they don't get during the regular season. You're playing against all the games are on TV. They're playing against more famous universities and colleges in the tournament, and you're coming up against some highly ranked teams, and you know you can certainly help yourself if going professional is your dream. But the one thing that's different now than when we were kids. Now we
were kids a long time ago.
We occasionally saw college games, but you know you read about them, but you knew the players because they were there for 3 years.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now they're coming in as freshmen and going out.
Is that right? That's really happening a lot?
Huh?
That's happening a lot?
Oh, absolutely. Several years ago when Kentucky won the NCAAs, he lost his whole team, went pro after that, and I think four of them were freshmen. So it's different.
Well, they should not allow them to graduate when they do something like that.
They don't graduate. They're just leaving.
We'll punish them. It'll be like Obama's sanctions against the Russian 7. Or,
But the heyday of UCLA, you knew those guys because they stayed. They had to stay. You couldn't go pro. You could, and then later on in the 70s, they created something called a hardship. Yeah, I need more money now, so they want that. But you had guys for 3 years, so you saw guys come up as sophomores and juniors and seniors, and you got to know even some of these teams that were obviously UCLA, it's other parts of the country, because it's the same team you saw on TV from last year's NCAA, and you kind of got to know the guys, but that's not the case. It's that's one of the things about Wichita. Is a lot of these guys stuck around for another year to try to come back and win. So
this is
ma'am.
Yeah.
His first
the official teacup provider of the show with no name, just a rat. Okay. I brewed my own tea this morning, waiting for. Thank you. Left the coffee for Jim, and Jim's not here. Thank you, official tea provider.
But that's how it was when you were at Albany State. The guys, they were the whole time. Yeah. You had a big kid from Gloversville who played while you were there. I don't remember his name, but the Quattorchi brothers played for Albany when you were there. And
they had a pretty good team when I was there.
They did.
They hadn't gone.
They were Division II or III. I think they were Division II then.
Yeah, they hadn't gone to Division I yet. That came quite a bit later.
Yeah, and the Quattorchi, you knew them before they went there because when we were at Scully, they played for Fort Edward.
Right.
And Scully had gone up and played them at Fort Edward. I'm
trying to. It's skipped my mind now. But we had one really super colossally good player. Doc Sowers coached from then until just now, right?
Yeah, just about.
I was amazed to see that he was still in the mix. I mean, I've been out of college for
quite a few years.
40 years.
Well, it's the same thing with Bob Ford. Their football coach was there forever. He was when he started the program down there.
Boy, there's something about that state retirement system.
Yeah. But because when I was at Hartwick, played SUNY Albany when I was in college. That's how I knew. Well,
then I'll tell you what. You saw more Albany State basketball games than I did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I came home every weekend. And so I was never around when there were. I mean, I could have got in free to all the games because I had my student pass, but I never saw a game. And I like basketball.
I think though when we'd gone down the 1 year to see Hartwick play SUNY, it was during the week because somehow I remember we had to go right back afterwards because we had I had class the next day, so I think it was a week game, a weeknight game that they played down there. Now I ran cross country for Hartwick, and we ran against SUNY Albany in cross country, and we had a little short yellow bus. We used to, no, it was blue, wasn't yellow, that we'd go to the meets in. And right about the time we got to Waynesburg on Route 7 coming down to Albany, there was a song on the radio, Lola.
Oh, yes.
Was being played. And
The Showgirl, that one?
no,
Oh, which one is this then?
by the Kinks.
Oh, keep going. Give us a few bars.
I look like a woman, walk like a man.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Well, anyhow.
That was around the same time as I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new pair, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. That was by Melanie. Sang that one. But anyhow, so we heard this song coming in the campus, and we had a chance to walk the course before we ran it. But you could tell when you caught up to a guy from Hartwick, because you could hear him humming the tune Lola as we ran, because it was just one of those tunes that got stuck in your head and you couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah.
And the fact that SUNY Albany had a good cross-country team and we didn't meant a lot of those Hartwick guys were running along together very slowly at the back of the pack. So, which we all, that got stuck in our heads.
But you remember the music.
Remember
well,
the music.
you know, the reason I brought up the other song is around the same time. I think it was spring break in '72. Well, it was February break, I think. I forget. I think it wasn't.
One of your many breaks that we got.
Well, I think at that point the first semester rolled over into January, and I think like at the end, the last couple of weeks of January we had off, and that's when we went to Florida, a bunch of us, and
over here.
No, the real one, the big one. In fact, Disney World was only open about 3 months at that point. It opened in October, and I think we were there in maybe early February. And so three of us guys from college went down, and one of them had his father lent him a car. It was, you know, kind of an older car, a basic car, but it got us where we were going. And at the beginning of the trip, we each put $25 in an envelope, put it in the glove compartment, and as we needed gas and oil and stuff like that, and you know, overnight camping facilities, very few of which we paid for. Anyway, the one thing this car didn't have was a decent radio. It would only pick up like WCSS. You know what I'm saying? Not that that wouldn't be decent. What I'm saying is it only picked up the radio station you were next to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we would never get more than one or at most two radio stations at a time. And so we're going, you know, once we crossed the Mason-Dixon line, all we heard on the radio were the farm reports, the Jesus stations, and I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. Oh my God! It was over, and after not very long, every time it came on, we just started laughing hysterically, and you know, because it's like we're stuck in the Twilight Zone somewhere. There was an episode like that, Twilight Zone episode. Oh yeah, they were playing that song we used to sing at Crystal Bar. Yeah. Take My Heart. Yeah. Remember Take My Heart? Huh?
Take My Heart?
All the hours I spent here with you are like words from a poet's pen. Words like love and truth and goodness. It's not ringing a bell?
No.
Words like
No
till death us do part. I will never love another. Take my heart, take my heart, take my heart. Well, that used to play all the time at Crystal Bar, and everybody would be singing it. And then I saw this Twilight Zone episode where that's exactly what happened. Every time no matter what the guy pressed on the jukebox, up came that song.
Kind of like Groundhog Day.
Kind of like Groundhog Day, yeah. That was the new Twilight Zone. Or no, maybe it wasn't Twilight Zone. It was a Night Watch with Rod Serling. Anyway, so there we go. So now that we've wasted the first 10 minutes of the show,
I don't think reminiscing is a waste.
Reminiscing
of time.
is never a waste of time, but we should get to. important things. Speaking of sports, no, seriously now, Whitey Murray passed away yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I think we'll devote more time to him on the radio show on Tuesday, but just preliminarily, was there a greater guy in the city of Amsterdam than Whitey Murray?
He was the most kid-centered guy that existed in Amsterdam. He helped found the Little Giants. He founded the prep league. He sponsored teams. He was at
he was coaching. He was refereeing.
He was.
Yeah.
He went to every fundraiser. He went to more fundraisers than even our local assemblyman
Yeah, that could be.
went to.
And he stayed.
Paul Tonko, yes.
He didn't take two to go.
No, he stayed all the time. So
Wonderful guy, and affable on top of everything else.
Yeah.
His granddaughter wrote the most moving tribute to him yesterday. It was funny and it was sincere, and it really captured the guy terrifically. We'll read it on Tuesday, I think. But among other points that she made is that he started all like the Little Giants because he wanted his boys to have something to do. Dave and Paul. I haven't seen the Murray boys in decades. Dave Murray used to be a lifeguard at the Y, and he was trying to date the same girl as my brother in high school. He wanted to.
Was he successful? Yeah.
Athlete.
Yeah.
We won't go into that, but I remember Dave from the Y and Paul. They were, I think, both a little bit older. Dave was maybe 3 years older than me, and I think Paul maybe a year older, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Well, in any event, just a sweet. He worried, according to the granddaughter, that by doing all this other stuff, he wasn't spending enough time with his own kids, and obviously his own kids adored him, as well they should. It was just a peach. The guy with the garden,
Yeah, right down on Clisby Ave.
Yeah.
Yeah, always had a successful garden too.
Always.
His corn was always knee-high by the 4th of July.
That's right. And sunflowers reached over the top of the roof.
Yeah.
And he kept it where you could see it.
Oh yeah, right on the highway there, on the street. Absolutely.
Well,
He'll be missed by a lot of people.
I mentioned that this was a guy who did more for Amsterdam than the rest of us put together, and it's a little hyperbole, but there are very few like him. Herschel was another one, and of course I think he was involved together with Whitey on some of those projects. I think it was maybe about 92, and what a good life and what a good example for the rest of us.
It's very civic-minded, very kid-oriented.
And never tried to cash in on it.
No, he didn't.
No, I mean, it was just he did this, and he wasn't looking for honors. He wasn't looking. The honor is in the work he left behind.
Yeah, and a lot of kids that didn't even know him benefited from what he had done.
And everybody knew him, right? I mean, I didn't hang out with the Murray kids. I never went over to his house, but everybody knew who Whitey Murray was. Right.
He had the gas station.
Had the gas station
down Guy Park Ave.
Yeah. I think he had the Five Corners one at one time too, didn't he? Didn't he run Sleazax for a while?
I don't know.
I forget. It's a long time ago.
But he's a great man.
Yeah.
Great man.
All right. Okay, what else is happening in the city of Amsterdam?
Well, there's goings on at Fonda, I understand.
Yes, I only know what I.
You only know what you heard?
What I heard, and I'm not sure I know what to make of it. Is see, most of these things get discussed primarily in chambers. The lawyers go in and sit down with the judge. What are the issues here? How can we narrow this? Where are we going with this? Any way we can settle this? So, we didn't record the show on Tuesday, and it's a shame because I don't think you could ever possibly recreate your role as the plaintiff in the case.
Mayor Shame? I mean, thing? Yeah. It just, I think the council made a wise move trying to narrow the focus down and take part of the clouds out of the equation.
Here's, just so that people understand what we're talking about, even if we don't, the part of the mayor's lawsuit against the city or against the Common Council, it's not clear actually, I just call it Amsterdam versus Amsterdam, is about the fact that the Common Council passed a resolution after the mayor refused to sign the Golf Pros contract. The Common Council passes a resolution authorizing someone else to sign it, either the city clerk or the deputy mayor, which they did, and I'm not sure whether the documents actually got signed or not. But that was one of the issues in the case. They were looking for a declaration that the deputy mayor could not do this absent the incapacity of the mayor. Or absence.
Well, I'm glad it's not incapacity because I think she is often incapacitated.
Yeah, well, those are subjective things. But you can, for example, you will know if she's outside the city. If she's outside the city limits, and
somebody else.
And then somebody else can do it. I suppose all they got to do is watch the car as soon as it goes to Price Chopper. Quick, sign the contract, right?
Or goes up to the high school and drops somebody off or picks somebody up.
Right. Yeah. On the city car.
Yeah.
Well. So I'm at first taken aback when on Tuesday they voted to rescind the authorization for the deputy mayor to sign it. And then I start thinking about it, and I came to the same conclusion you did. Why muddle this up? Because now that it's before the court, the only real issue is, did the mayor have an obligation to sign the contract after it was passed by the Common Council?
Over her veto.
Over her veto. And my opinion, and I think there are plenty of court cases to go along with it, is that, she did have that obligation. Okay, so now the only defense she has against not signing it is the theory that the Common Council had no right to pass the contract in the first place. All right? That it wasn't something that they had a right to do. Because otherwise, she would be required to sign it after they passed it. Okay, so that's an interesting issue. I think she loses on that issue, but that's the issue. Now, if the court rules in her favor that the Common Council had no right to authorize the contract in the first place, then you never get to the issue of could the deputy mayor sign it or not sign it. Now it becomes a no. It's an improper act to begin with, and therefore
everything.
If on the other hand the court rules that the Common Council did have the right to sign it, then the court would just say, Mayor, you sign this, or I'll sign it for you. At which point, again, you don't reach the issue: does the deputy mayor have the authority to sign it, even with a resolution? Now, personally, I think she does, absent anything to the contrary in the charter, which I have not been able to find. No,
you can't find a charter. Or you can't find anything
I can't find anything applicable.
Okay.
Applicable. So it unclutters that issue. Now, that said, let's get to what I think is the stranger part of the lawsuit. Well, it's all strange, but it's new. It's new and strange. and that is the attempt to bar the Common Council from adopting or amending a golf course ordinance. And I'm not saying that as I'm not correcting myself. It's either it is an and or adopting and or amending the golf ordinance, the Golf Commission ordinance. The mayor argues in her papers that they can't do that because the Common Council does not have the authority to make an ordinance with respect to the Golf Commission, to creating a Golf Commission. This would strike most people as odd, I think, because it specifically says in the charter that the Common Council, that the Recreation Department Recreation Commission governs recreation, except that the Common Council may by ordinance set up a golf commission to run the golf course, which they subsequently did. In 1984, 30 years ago, okay? So the argument now is that the local law which changed the charter and allowed the Common Council to set up a golf commission was in itself improperly adopted. The consequence of adopting such a theory is that the mayor is saying that the Golf Commission, as presently constituted, is improper, illegal, and that all the people she appointed to it are appointed to nothing, and that they have no authority whatsoever. They have no authority to issue RFPs, they have no authority to do her bidding, none of this, and that in fact, what she's saying is that the charter as it existed before it amended means that the Recreation Commission is in charge of the golf course.
Which is something that
Which is something that has never happened. Okay?
So she's...
In the 75 years the golf course has been there, the Recreation Commission has never exercised authority over the golf course, even though for a few years from 1979 to 1984, if you read the charter to mean what it said, then they were in charge, but in fact they weren't.
Right.
Because there had been a golf commission before that, and the new charter, the 78-79 charter, did not contain any reference to the golf course. And it was, as far as I can tell, completely inadvertent, because I had, on my charter commission in 1982, when we examined this issue, we had people on our charter commission who had been on the 78 charter commission, and so we had the benefit of their insight. Well, how come it's not, there's no reference to the golf course here or a golf commission? And the answer was, I think it was Joe Zawisza. He said, what we did was we followed the Gloversville city charter, and they didn't have a golf course, so we have no reference to it. I said, what about the bus system? Same thing. So now there are references to the Transportation Department and the Golf Commission, but those came subsequently when, we said, hey,
we missed something here.
You missed something here.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was a result of I was chairman, the Going Commission. The Gazette referred to it in an editorial as the Going Commission. Going Commission has done a fine job. And we have. We disagree with them, however, on some points. Which was okay. That's what they're there for. So where does that leave you? You win the case, and now you don't have a golf. Now we got to turn everything over to the Recreation Commission, bring them up to speed, and have them issue new RFPs, and we have no contracts, and the golf course opens in another 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think they're gonna rule in favor of that. I think they'll.
Well, if they
now something that if they rule in the mayor's favor, saying that she does not have to sign this,
Mhm.
doesn't that create an imbalance in the separation of powers?
Oh.
If they ruled that?
Clearly, it means an override of a veto means absolutely nothing.
Correct.
Yeah.
So veto is carved in granite and
Yeah.
cannot be erased. So I don't think they could rule in that favor.
No, I don't. I don't think. No, to me, I think this is pretty open and shut. But I thought it was open and shut end to end. But I understand, why get rulings that you're going to have to live with afterwards if it's not an issue right now, which makes sense to me in a certain level. But I've already done the research on it. Why, just going to, I say, charge ahead, get everything right. Now, okay, so the theory going back 30 years is that a charter can be amended by local law, and it does not have to be submitted to the voters unless it fits certain categories. And one of them is that it removes the power of an elected official, or lessens or increases the power, changes the power of an elected official. Okay.
So that would relate both to the council and to the mayor.
Or the treasurer, or the controller. So let's think about this. In 1984, first of all, we don't even know that it wasn't submitted to the voters in 1984. They submit no proof of this whatsoever. There's nothing from the city clerk's office showing the official records, or the Secretary of State's office that would actually answer this question. There are papers that you have to file when you pass a local law. You have to file with the Secretary of State of the state of New York. And it only becomes a part of your charter when it's certified by the Secretary of State as adopted. Okay? Among the papers that you have to submit is a statement from the Corporation Council regarding this particular issue, whether it was subject to a mandatory referendum, and if so, that it passed on such and such a date, or whether it was subject to a permissive referendum, and whether 10% of the voters petitioned to have it, and it was on a referendum, or they didn't, in which case it's okay. So there's an affidavit from the Corporation Council attached to this local law that goes to the Secretary of State that says it was properly adopted. Okay? That paper has to be available both in the city clerk's office and in the Secretary of State's. They did not submit it, throw the case out. But let's assume the issue is still before us. Let's assume that that they find the papers and that it says no, it did not go to a referendum. Okay. Let's get back to the underlying fundamental issue, which is, does that local law, which removes the oversight of the Recreation Commission, reduce or change a power of the mayor? And the answer is, it does not. Or any other elected official, because the Recreation Commission members are not elected officials.
No,
they're appointed, and I think subject to the approval of the Common Council, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong about that. Because some of these boards are, some of them aren't, I'm not sure. But I think subject to the approval of the Common Council. So, okay. So the only control over the Recreation Commission that the mayor and the Common Council have is A, the power of appointment, subject to approval, and B, the power of the purse. How much money are you going to give them? Otherwise, under under the charter, the Recreation Commission operates independently with respect to recreation issues. In reality, I don't know whether that's the case or not, but the mayor cannot direct the Recreation Commission to do anything. Okay? All she can do is make the appointments, and the appointments are staggered and roll over from term to term. All right? They're 5-year terms, I think. So how does oversight of the golf course affect a mayor's power? I don't think it does. And I'm sure that Joe Jacobs, who was the best corporation counsel the city ever had, Mike Riccio was great too, in case you're watching, Mike. So was I. But Joe Jacobs was a long time. He served for I think 16 years as a corporation counsel under two mayors, a Republican and a Democrat. What he gave you was straight.
And that's what he was supposed to do.
Right, and he did.
He was supposed to be apolitical.
Yep. He was a political guy, but he gave you a straight legal answer, even if it didn't agree with what his boss wanted him to say. So Joe Jacobs obviously thought that this was not subject to a mandatory referendum, and so certified. Mario Villa, who was a very assertive mayor with respect to his executive rights, right?
Yeah, that's one way to
absolutely
say it.
Is absolutely not someone who would give away his powers without a fight. Okay? Obviously, he didn't think there was anything wrong with passing a local law which said the Common Council can, by ordinance, set up a golf commission. All right. Now, these things were not done simultaneously. They were done maybe about a month apart in 1984. The local law was adopted first, certified, gone to the Secretary of State. Then the ordinance went before the Common Council, setting up the Golf Commission. Now, one of the things that ordinance does not do, and it's basically unchanged since 1984, it does not specify who appoints the members of the commission, except that it mentions that a non-voting member of the Common Council is appointed by the mayor. It says that. Now, this is an ordinance adopted by the Common Council. They could have, under the local law that had just been adopted, they could have said, the Common Council will appoint all the members of the Golf Commission. Right? Mm-hmm. They could have said the Common Council will appoint one of its own members to the Golf Commission as we see fit. Mm-hmm. They chose not to. They by ordinance gave that power to the mayor, and by ordinance they can take it away. So unless you throw out the 1984 local law amending the city charter, the Common Council at this point, even if the mayor wins, has the power to change the ordinance, appoint all new members to the Golf Commission as they see fit, and then proceed along the lines that they already have, and just go back to square one and put out new RFPs or whatever, or enter into a contract with the pro. I don't see how you get around that.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can get around it.
Now, and to add to the solidity of this concrete that's forming, one of the things the municipal home rule law says is that you do not have to submit the local law for a vote if the local law is one that codifies the city charter and the city code. We discussed this on Tuesday, but we didn't record it. This, in fact, was done subsequently in the 1990s, and I think it was when, I'm pretty sure it was when Alderman DeCasatis was on the council. And the entire city charter was readopted in that codification process, as was the whole city code, and all of which says that that this is it. Anything else that's ever been adopted is no longer in effect, because this is the final product. Okay? You may dig up a local law that was passed in 1903. It's no longer valid. We hereby repeal, change, reiterate, reassert, and all that. And there were many, many changes made, both in the charter itself and in the code, or in the other local laws and ordinances. All right. So not only is the city charter reaffirmed at that point, but the golf ordinance is reaffirmed at that point and could have been changed. So where's the argument? The argument is a pretty thin one. First and foremost, there is a presumption under the law that a law was properly adopted. So, once it enters the book, it's presumed to be properly adopted, and it's the affirmative duty of someone challenging it to show that it wasn't adopted properly. Jerry used the same argument in his opinion about the public works issue. The city charter originally said, when I say originally, I mean the 79 charter, said, that's the dog in the background, by the way. He's disagreeing with what I have to say. No, I'm sorry, Chip. Actually, he's got an ear infection. Killing him. Come here, Chip. The city charter in 1970, the 1978-79 city charter, enlisting the duties of the Common Council, says, first of all, that these are not the only powers and duties of the Common Council. It says these exist along with other powers that are not listed here. Okay, and it says the power to approve all public works contracts. All right. We saw this in the charter in 1982 and said, well, this doesn't make sense. The Common Council, unless it says otherwise, has the power to approve all contracts.
Right.
And so we discussed this and changed it to say, to remove the word works and just make it all public contracts.
So that really is not an omission as it's being purported to be.
Right. It was a deliberate deletion because
changed the meaning of it all.
Because it wanted to make clear what was otherwise vague, and that is that they had the power to approve all contracts. Otherwise, no one has the power to approve contracts, because you can't say, because the mayor's powers are limited. Mm-hmm. Specifically limited to those powers which are listed and such others as are provided by law. So unless there's a section of law that gives the mayor the exclusive power to negotiate and adopt and enter into contracts other than public works contracts, then that power has to reside with the Common Council, or it resides nowhere, and it has to reside somewhere. I mean, I realize it sounds a little convoluted the way we have to go about it, but this is basic law. How a law is adopted. It has to be adopted by the legislature. A contract has to be approved by the legislature. If it's not, it makes no sense.
Because otherwise she'd have the power to go out and negotiate anything she wanted on her own, and that would be it. By
policy that's been adopted by the Common Council, they allow the mayor and other executive offices to enter into contracts so long as they're under a certain amount, and the money has been properly budgeted. So that every time somebody goes down to Conover for a box of pens, they don't have to get approval of the Common Council. Common Council does review those purchases, however, and can deny them if they think there's a reason to deny them. But that's not saying that the legislature doesn't have the power to do it. They're just saying, okay, we're not going to spend all our time doing this. We trust the mayor or the chief of police or whoever to enter into these minor contracts without having to approve every single thing.
Every purchase.
Every purchase and every, snow removal contract or whatever. Probably snow removal they would, it's public works. But in any event, now the argument again was raised by Jerry and kind of obliquely in the mayor's papers that that local law was not properly adopted. That it should have gone to a referendum because it takes away the power of the mayor. Our argument at the time was it does no such thing. All we're doing is clarifying a power that already existed in the Common Council and taking that word out so that exactly this situation would not arise. That some future mayor would say, well, the Common Council has no power because all they have is the power to approve public works contracts. So we changed it. And it was not adopted ultimately in our charter amendments, but did get adopted in 1986 when Alderman Petrucia, who had been on our commission, re-entered it as local law number 1 of 1986, passed, duly certified by the Corporation Counsel Joseph Jacobs, approved by Mayor Mario Villa, who would not give up a power that he had without fighting, as I mentioned earlier. And there was no dispute about it. And so when Jerry saw that in the charter it says public contracts and not public works contracts, he reached the erroneous assumption that it was just a typographical error. It was not a typographical error. It was a deliberate, intentional thing to remove an ambiguity that had previously existed.
So now there is no ambiguity.
So now they're arguing that a public contract. First of all, they're using the Jerry argument by including Jerry's as an exhibit, Jerry's opinion, that it wasn't properly adopted. And then secondly, they're saying public contracts obviously only means public works contracts or publicly bidded contracts, and which really, that in and of itself is a stretch. And then to say that this wasn't a publicly bidded contract, it was an RFP and it wasn't issued by the Common Council, it was issued by the Common Council routinely gives department heads, and in this case commissions, authority to issue a request for proposal or prepare specifications and advertise for bids for a particular purpose. I don't remember whether they did that in this case. I certainly got the impression that they did from something Gina said the other day, that they did back in September or October, that they did exactly that they allowed the Golf Commission to issue RFPs and and review them. Okay. All right. So the Golf Commission reached a conclusion different from the one the mayor reached, from the one the incoming council reached. So what?
They can have that right.
They have that right. They can approve whichever contract they want. They can take the Golf Commission's, they can take the city engineer's advice on something. City engineer recommends we go with this guy and not that guy. Well, okay, too bad. As a matter of fact, it was previously done with respect, when I was there, I'm pretty sure with respect to the concessionaire at the time. There were several people put in RFPs, they put in proposals to be the concessionaire when the position was open. And if I'm not mistaken, the Golf Commission made one recommendation and the Common Council took another. So what? That's their right. Okay, you may not like it, you may think it's stupid, you may think they're all idiots, and that, but that's their judgment, and that's what we pay them to do. We pay them to exercise their judgment, not to be rubber stamps. I don't know. So where's the, the papers are full of stuff like the Common Council met in secret and negotiated this contract with the Golf Pro. The contract that they entered into with the Golf Pro, as far as I can tell, is exactly what he presented as one of the people who responded to the RFP back in October.
And it's public.
Yeah.
Everybody can see what's in it. It was not colluded.
Right. It is virtually identical to his contract as it existed prior to the current, to the one that just expired. Okay? Now,
the one thing that they have to keep in mind is that there is a timeliness to this decision.
yeah.
It should be a timeliness to this decision.
Well, the judge has said that. The judge put this on the fast track, and he said that specifically. That hey, the flowers are going to start popping through pretty soon. The golf course is going to need to be opened. So let's assume the mayor wins everything. Well, let's assume that there's a permanent injunction that the Common Council cannot change the ordinance, that the Mayor's Golf Commission gets to decide everything. The guy they wanted to hire has already said no.
Correct.
Okay? He said, no, I'm doing something else. See ya.
I don't get involved.
I don't want to get involved in this. So let's assume the Golf Commission decides they want somebody else. That still has to be approved by the Common Council, or at least it always has been. Or maybe they'll say no, or maybe not. Maybe the decision will be no. The Common Council has no right to oversee the golf course. I mean, that's the only way you get
To exclude them.
To exclude them, right?
Not.
It doesn't make any sense. But even if it's, then what? Then who gets hired? And who does what? And who makes a decision as to what the fees are? Does the Golf Commission make those decisions, or does the Common Council?
And the scary part is then it also implies that the mayor is not required to follow anything that she vetoes, even if the Common Council overrides her veto. Her veto is final. Right. And that is not how things were established.
No, that's why we have veto overrides. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's
see, I don't. It's inconceivable to me if the argument is properly presented, which is always a question. The judge only has before him what he has before him. He can only rule on what he has in front of him, right? And unless I'm the guy making the argument, nobody's going to make my argument for me, right?
But isn't the judge required to read the charter in this case and determine, irregardless of what somebody says, what the intent of that law is?
But he has to have the law pointed out to him. And if somebody concedes that the point of law is such, or narrows it so much that for example, we talked Tuesday about that whole almost unreadable section of the state general city law, which they're hanging their hats on, is showing that because it's a lease, that the mayor has to approve it. Well, I showed on Tuesday how that does not, in my opinion. That law is not even applicable in this case, not only because it isn't a lease, but because the section by its own admission does not apply. Okay, if you read the whole section of law, you'll see how it doesn't apply because the city has adopted other means to lease property in the charter. So that took me a while to reach that conclusion. Suppose suppose the alderman's attorney concedes the point that that's a valid piece of law. I'm not saying he would. I think it'd be crazy if he did. But anything can happen in the heat of a discussion. Well, then you can lose even though you're right. Yeah.
Now, who is representing the Common Council?
Michael Brockbank from Schenectady.
Why would you go outside the city to bring somebody in to argue your case when it really pertains specifically to the city? Wouldn't you? Well,
because Paul Wallman's out of town, and
okay,
and I'm not doing it.
I understand,
Okay.
but now who did the mayor bring in?
The mayor brought in somebody from out of town
as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I've met the attorney previously, but off the top of my head, I don't know what his background is. A good lawyer is a good lawyer, and I'm sure he came well recommended. I'm pretty sure, almost positive, he's a Republican lawyer, which I think that might have influenced their opinion. So, in any event, he came in very cold on this case. Okay,
Cold and short.
This just popped up last week.
Yeah.
Just about a week ago. And they didn't even receive their papers until afterwards. So he had probably one business day, Monday, to go through this and then advise them to make the resolutions they did on Tuesday. And then had to prepare the argument on Thursday without ever having had the benefit of, say, my wisdom. Or Mario Villa's wisdom, or
any number of other people in this community
who have studied the issue. And there's nobody on the Common Council who's a lawyer. There are some who have kind of studied these things, have been involved in municipal law in the past, but that doesn't make them experts on the finer point of law, or even know how to express to the attorney what the legal issues are. In other words, coming in cold, I wouldn't. If I were just handed this from the city of Hudson, I don't think I'd be ready in 3 days to, or feel comfortable saying in 3 days that I understand everything we're talking about here, because there are things that I'm not even privy to. You would not know, reading the mayor's papers, that anything that I said about how public works was changed. You wouldn't know how the local laws were adopted in 1984 or 1986. Okay, you wouldn't know that. You would not even know if you read the mayor's. If you just read the mayor's papers, you wouldn't even know there had been a veto override. So that's all he's got to go with, other than what his five or six clients are telling him.
Right.
And they're probably all talking at once. So it's tough. It's tough. So I'm not expecting, him to be completely up to speed yesterday. And I'm hoping that he'll be completely up to speed before he submits his papers next Thursday.
All right. Being the judge in the case, is he allowed to have any extraneous information that he has glean by living in this community about the issue?
Not really, although not really, except that if he does have such information from gleaning in the community, he can ask. He's certainly free to ask the lawyers about it and tell them, what about this issue? I'd like you to provide me some law on this issue. Okay? And that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, he can't on his own just create the facts of the case because he read something in the recorder. But he can say, what about this issue? I mean, on the bench, there were times when, just reading the documents in front of me, or the exhibits, I would.
You knew there was something missing.
I had questions about stuff that wasn't there, and I would ask the lawyers to, well, what about this? Doesn't this mean this, or am I mistaken? And then they go on, So yeah, you're not. The court can take judicial notice of things like the when Easter falls in respect to the vernal equinox, but it cannot make a determination on its own as to whether Mayor Thane did this or Diane Hatzenbuehler did that. Those have to be presented properly or accepted by the attorneys. So. That's not a particularly clear answer, but you're mostly correct in your assumption. But
we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Somebody suggested on Facebook that, without saying why, that they said, "Well, I assume Seiss won't take the case," and that I don't understand what the reasoning behind that would be. I don't know why he wouldn't. He's never hesitated to take a case related to the city before. He did the Chalmers case, and I don't see that. He's not a former corporation counsel, and nobody.
Is he a golfer?
I don't know what that makes any difference. Just because you play the game doesn't mean you're. You understand.
He'll keep the case based upon his understanding of himself that he's going to give a fair and honest opinion.
Well, absolutely. The fact that he's a taxpayer is almost irrelevant. I mean, it's such a minor part of. Otherwise you'd never be able to decide anything. Is it going to affect you? Well, I suppose a couple cents a year, maybe, depending on how you look at it. But his job is not to decide who's got the better idea for running the golf course. No. It's who has the authority. Big difference. No. I'm sure that if I wanted to, I could make an argument, a very solid economic argument, that the city would be better off, or could be better off, renting the golf carts themselves. Knowing how, I'm not going to make that argument, because knowing how the city runs businesses, I can just see them losing money on the golf carts year after year. But you can see how the argument can be made. Mm-hmm. But reasonable minds can differ on such things as to whether that's in the best interest. And do we get something esoteric or that you can't even put a finger on, having somebody like Joe Morendo as the pro at the golf course? Is his compensation package reasonable if you take the golf carts away from him, and things like that? I mean, the whole thing that makes a whole package cheap for the city is the fact that he's able to do that business on the side.
But along with that business, it comes responsibility for those
absolutely.
things, which contributes to the success of.
Right, and he's got other people working for him, and things like that, And he takes a risk. He could rent too many golf carts from whoever he rents them from, and end up losing money on them.
Yeah.
He's taking the risk. The city isn't, right?
Yeah, 'cause the city knows what they're getting up front.
Yeah. Okay. So the city doesn't rent the golf carts. This guy does, and we pay him whatever, $23,000 a year, whatever it is, which is
Not much.
not much.
Not much.
It's a lot less than some of our other professionals get paid, like the corporation council.
And we probably get more out of the golf course than we do out of the corporation council.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a golfer. I don't, my connection with the golf course terminated when my father got sick in 1970 and never golfed again. And that's a few years ago.
Well, it doesn't. No, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But if the decision is grounded on good information and law, I think in the end it's going to benefit the city, and I think it's going to demonstrate to the mayor the proper understanding of separation of powers,
Right.
and maybe cause her to be a little bit more
Flexible?
flexible, realizing that there is more than just her own opinion that could be utilized and
Yeah.
oftentimes successfully. It's not a
See, the whole
theocracy.
pretense that what she's doing is in the economic interest of the taxpayers, that's good fluff. But she's really never done anything in the economic interest of the taxpayers, nor should we expect her to. She seems to want a blank check for everything, and to bring up the idea, even to bring it up while this is pending, of your 300 to 400 seat banquet hall on the golf course site is just, if nothing else, real bad politics. It's bad argument. Bad argument.
The city should, the government of the city should not be in competition with private industry.
Well, that's for absolute sure, and we are all the time. Which is why I'm, that's why she supports the city running the bus system, and I want it abolished. All it is a huge drain on the taxpayer, huge drain on the taxpayers. And the number of people who use it is so small that, other than, I like the guys who are the bus drivers. Most of them are friends of mine. I don't want to see them out of a job, but that's not the issue. The issue is, should we be spending over $100,000 a year subsidizing a system that few people use? Should we be subsidizing people's commute to Albany, where they all have jobs? Let them find their own way to Albany, not have Joe taxpayer paying for your bus ride.
And if her belief is she's looking out for the benefit, that is completely contrary to the taxpayers in the community of Amsterdam, because it is not beneficial financially to the taxpayers.
All right.
It's a gozada, not a gazindas.
A what?
A gozada. The money goes out, doesn't come in.
Yeah.
Gozada, not a
Yeah.
gazindas.
Right.
And if she's using that argument why Morendo shouldn't be at the golf course and should be done other way, then you're arguing against yourself.
Right.
Someplace else. And
Well, arguing against herself never bothered her.
at least somebody listens now.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you about this leasing thing that's in the general city law. If you accept the argument that this is the law that applies, then everything else she has done as mayor is improper. The leasing of the Riverlink Park, the leasing of the art center in the East End, whatever arrangements they have with your school district. I don't even know what that is. All according to that law she quotes, all have to be approved by the public. Every time a house is sold or a piece of property is sold, has to be approved in a public referendum, if you follow that section of the law.
And I don't think that's happening.
That's never happened, and there's a reason it hasn't happened, because it doesn't apply. Oh man.
And it goes to show her fundamental lack of understanding of government and as her
Right.
position in government.
Right.
She doesn't understand. And that's right out of, I say it again, it's right out of the presidential playbook that's being
Yeah.
utilized today.
But I sort of think it's a boy. I've seen a lot of mayors think they had more powers than they had, and I heard one argue, "Well, I don't understand why I can't do this." I forget what it was. It was like giving a particular employee a raise and not all of them, or something like that. And he says, the President of the United States can pardon felons. And the answer was, well, you're not the President of the United States.
And I believe that's also indicated in the Constitution that he has that power.
Well, that's right. That's right.
It's there.
But, there's... It really all goes back to this novel government we created in 1776. Legal decisions had to be made fairly early on because initially governmental power flowed from the king.
From the top down.
Okay? And even before there was a constitution, we had the Articles of Confederation, and each state had its own rules. Now, the states, for example, New York was governed, had a legislature. We had our own legislature, but we had a governor who was appointed by the king, and his executive power came from the king, and the legislative power was advisory, same as the British Parliament at the time, more or less. And the king could the king or the governor could abolish the parliament or the legislature as he saw fit.
They can be dismissed.
Okay, so now we've got all of a sudden we've declared our independence, and we ignore the colonial governor. Forget who that was. I got to look this up. So that must have been an interesting period in New York history. The colonial governor vamooses at some point. And so now the courts that we are now setting up have to decide what happened to this sovereign power of the king. And so there's all kinds of case law and legislative decisions and such that defining sovereignty. And it was determined that sovereignty rested with the legislature, with the people that were elected by the people, with the men who were elected by the people. And I say men because they were all men at the time.
Yes, they were.
And so it was up to the legislatures, both by the states and the national legislature, to determine, as the Declaration of Independence says, such institutions as to them best secure their happiness. Something like that. I wish I could quote these things directly, but yeah. And that's exactly right. So the legislatures created the new limited governors, gave them a certain amount of passed off a certain amount of their sovereignty, maintained a certain amount of the sovereignty for themselves. And even when you get down to the city level, even deciding issues like what class of the civil service people are in. One of the determining factors is, does this officer or employee exercise sovereignty, any portion of the sovereignty of the city? Does the police chief exercise a certain amount of sovereignty? Yes, he has certain powers that do this. The fire chief has, powers to condemn buildings and stuff like that. Those are powers of sovereignty that belong with the municipality, granted by the state of New York. And so those individuals are in that classification. Some of the inspectors have certain exercise certain amounts of sovereignty, and all of this is figured into the law in so many different respects. So we did away with kings. I've said this over and over and over again.
And queens.
And queens. We
Wow.
did away with kings and queens. We don't have them anymore. Sovereignty is with the legislature, and the legislature dispenses their sovereignty in other directions. Simple as that. And we have a constitution that requires the people to amend it in the state.
Cannot be done unilaterally.
In fact, the municipality, under the municipal home rule law, if a charter is adopted by the people, right? Whole charter, or parts of it, that charter can make a provision that says that the Common Council cannot change this charter or certain parts of it, any or all of it, without it going before the people.
Because the people created it.
Right. So I don't know if any municipalities have adopted such a thing, but it is possible. We did it, in fact, in a limited way with respect to on the last city charter commission I was on, with respect to the issue of raising the taxes by a percentage each year, tax limitation. Can only be approved by the people, although Corporation Council disagrees with my opinion on that as well. So anyway, there we are.
We'll see what happens.
See.
Shortly.
Very shortly. Very shortly. Sometimes, just sitting on the sidelines is tough.
Be a fly on the
And
wall.
when it's all over, no matter what happens,
It shall be what we will abide by.
the mayor is going to have to find a way to work with this common council in a non-confrontational way. And she's going to have to yield, because the budget's coming up and they control every dime that her office can spend.
She's gonna have to learn to play nice in the sandbox and share her toys.
And she doesn't play nice. It's her personality, but I guess, it's so stupid. And there's no other word for it. It is so stupid to go on Facebook and call a member of the Common Council a liar. Okay? I understand frustrations. Been there.
People have no sense of decorum or appropriateness when it comes to these new means of public communication.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Twitter, we are in a new world.
They just don't understand, and particularly as a public figure. I'm not even saying a public official, but as a public figure, it so demeans the position that you hold to utilize something. If you want to go ahead, put it in the newspaper, all right? But to use these other means, it's just childish.
And it's too easy to be spontaneous.
Yeah.
Now, I do think.
I mean, we've probably said things on here that.
Oh, I know, but you know what? We're commentators. We comment. That's our job. And people correct us, we correct.
Yeah.
Be happy to correct it. But yeah, when you're holding office now, but having said that, there are some useful things. For example, there was a member of the Golf Commission who was on Facebook several days ago, giving his perspective on all these issues and explaining his understanding of the facts and what we went through to make these determinations and all that. And people asked him questions, and of course, people were attacking each other as usual. But and he would respond, and it was a good give and take. Diane, as I've said, sometimes shoots from the hip, but when people ask her questions, well, how does this come about? How does that come about? This is my understanding of it. Well, you're wrong, Diane. This is oh, okay, all right. So those are discussions like you would have in a coffee shop. But if they're done in a civil manner and designed to get to the truth or to get to information, or here's the basis of my argument. And there's a certain amount of back and forth and give and take on it. Those can serve a useful purpose, but to
attack,
just to attack or to spin your position is a completely different thing. It's easy for us to say. Well, I was going to say we don't hold public office. You do, but we're not discussing any of your issues here. I might as well bring it up, though. I see the board has decided, the school board has decided against moving to Bacon. Period. At this point.
At this point, doing anything with the central office in Bacon is off the table right now. They primarily because of financial reasons and the cost of doing things and where that cost is going to come from. By utilizing space at Lynch Middle School, we have monies in our building projects that can do the adaptation of the area in Lynch without going out to the taxpayers or having money being spent for the taxpayers to do that. Because the bottom line is CAB is just crumbling.
Yeah.
And even if they did some patchwork and bringing it up, in the long run, it's not what I don't think the community of the district really wants to take place. So it won't be going to Bacon. They're going to do some renovation with some monies that we already have at Lynch. And
now, what kind of space is available there? I hadn't until I did the Future Authors talk last week. I had not been in Lynch in several years.
When you come in, the visitors' doors on the back of the building.
On the new part.
On the new part.
Yeah.
Just to the right is the attendance officer's booth.
Right.
Where people sign in and sign
Right.
out. And just to the left of there's a hallway. If you go down that hallway, there's 4 classrooms. And they're going to be utilizing those 4 classrooms for a good portion of what CAB presently has for office space. They're going to be leaving the storage facility at CAB as it stands now because it's dry and we have a lot of things that need to be stored. And they're going to do that. At some point, there is going to have to be some work done at Bacon because they've got some issues with the stairs. There's going to be issues with the roof, but they're looking at introducing some classrooms up there, probably pre-K classrooms up there, which means because you've got students in the building, you have access to monies that doesn't have to come out of the taxpayer's pocket to work on the building then.
Yeah.
But that's down the road. And with the talk in the community and the efforts being utilized in the community now for maybe putting a recreation center someplace that will do some things with Bacon.
Yeah.
Because after what I read in the paper, and they really want to have a full-blown center here in the community. We utilize Bacon for sports activities and some camps and programs for kids, and when you look at what they're proposing, it's like, wow. You're looking at one of those bubbles like they got down in Albany, where you've got you can put a ball field, you can put soccer fields in there, you can have club rooms and things, so that's what they're looking at. But as it stands now, CAB will not be going to Bacon. They do have a couple offices at Bacon that they're utilizing now for, I think it's the cafeteria department up there.
The cafeteria department.
Yeah, that's not the right word.
Yeah, that's okay.
The food service.
Food service.
They got moved out because of issues down there, but it looks like it's going to go to Lynch, and because we still have money left.
So you think there's enough room at Lynch?
They do.
Now, what grade levels do you have at Lynch right now?
The new wing is 6th grade. The old wing is 7th and 8th.
Okay.
So you're able to isolate the 6th graders from the older element.
Yeah, the older element. Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
The cafeteria is down in New Wing. The media center is down there. There are a couple special classrooms. They go back and forth after the other kids come into, but primarily the kids are segregated 6th grade and then 7th and 8th.
Excluding Bacon, which is sort of technically closed. How is the classroom space in the rest of the district? Underutilized, overutilized?
I think it's utilized. There's room. You know, if we had to add a particular class for a particular building, because the numbers, we could do that. At the high school, by putting those 4 additional classrooms on the back wing by the fitness center, they were able to do some things with scheduling that they weren't able to do before, because we had many teachers that were moving rooms throughout the course of the day, which, you know, doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is a big deal when you're talking about resources,
right,
and what you have for those. So, and it also allows an easier schedule, because you're not trying to only balance kids taking courses, but teachers taking rooms someplace else at the same time. It works out. So I think our room utilization is good right now in the district. We do have some things that we could do if we got a bubble someplace in a particular building for a particular grade, which you always have to look at, because you may end up getting 20 kids moving in the district and they may all be in the same grade. Or you may have an increase in special education students and you have to do something with that. So I think we're good. I think the administration has worked real hard to tighten things up. They had the big layoff about 3 years ago. They laid off a bunch of people as well as retirees, and that kind of shrunk things, and I think they're working well within what our capabilities are right now. And the budget looks good. The budget looks good. I do not think there's going to be an increase in.
Better not be, or you're out of there, buddy.
Oh, I can make that choice in another year. I don't have to go back anyhow. But
now, you know, speaking of which, we're rapidly approaching school board election time, and what do we got? 2 or 3 people up?
We have 3 up this year. Dr. Bush is up, Reverend Kent McCurd is up, and Peter Pritchard is up.
Okay. Are they running?
I don't know if they.
Well, don't give me any secret stuff.
I don't know if they picked up any. If they picked up their petitions, the petitions are available. We picked up anybody who wants to run now. I would hope that they run again. They each bring some real strong skill sets to the board.
Well, I can't. I got to tell you, I can't help but love Dr. Bush after she plugged my book on the show a couple of weeks ago.
You love her even more because she plugged at the board meeting the other night.
Did she? Really?
I gave her my
We're talking
copy.
about, what's the name of the book?
Where Do We Find Such Men?
Where Do We Find Such Men?
And,
Where Do We Find Such Men?
I gave her my copy because she wanted it at the board meeting, and she brought it down, and she spoke at length about the book and her view for utilization of the book, because there's emphasis of crossover in courses now. English doesn't just do English, history doesn't just do history, but how this could be utilized as a resource at the high school for English and social studies.
That's true. That is a real combo book.
And the importance of that book to the community, because it's rooted in the community.
Right.
And you know, and she talked about how people knew people and they knew other people in there and things how it was. But she really plugged it well, and she gave it back to me, but I gave it to Reverend McCurd to take and peruse at, and we did plug that. You can get.
Well, how many copies you need? I'll give them all copies. I got a trunk full of them.
Okay. No, we got one, but you know, like John Battisti, he's already read it. He read it, and Nellie read it, and I have. So, but she did plug it at the board meeting the other night, and as I said,
did John say anything about it? Or?
Yeah, he said it's a really good book.
All right, there you go. Thank you, John. You got my
You
vote.
know. He's not running this time, though.
Let's see. Did he run last year? I forget.
Yeah, he ran last year. Him and
Okay.
Carol Rico ran. Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah?
No, Carol didn't run last year. She gave up her seat. Robert Van Etten had her spot. But you know, the budget, like I said, the budget looks real good. It looks like there will be not any increase in taxes for any of the municipalities in the community. That's always subject to what the finalization is from the state, but it looks
Right,
real good. You know, I mean, and Kim, I'll tell you, she's sharp, and she only puts in what she knows, and she's always hoping for more. But what we got in there, she knows we got, and this is how it came out. So it looks real good there. We vote next month on the approval of the proposed budget, and then in first part of May there'll be the public hearing on the budget, and then the voting on the budget. But it's important for people to realize this year at election time, there's only going to be 4 polling places for the school board election.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and they're going to be doing things with the paper, the radio, our program, postcard mailings that you got to read, as well as the flyer that goes out on the budget every year to find out where you have to go. Because this year you're going to have the high school, you're going to have middle school, you're going to have Techler and Barclay. They're going to be the 4 places you can vote in the school board election. So people are going to have to, when you get your card, each
The
household.
high school and Techler are awfully close to each other.
Yeah, but that's Techler. That's the other one. Barclay, Techler, middle school and high school. Yeah.
All right, that about covers
Yeah.
the path, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where you're going to have to go to vote. It's not like it was before. So you got to pay attention because they'll tell you where you vote, because they combined, you know, wards and districts just like
Sure.
they did for the city election. So,
Yeah.
but that should be.
Now, are there going to be any referenda other than approving the budget?
The budget is referendum number 1, and referendum number 2 is the $5,000 for the library that gets put on the ballot every year. The
From 400?
400 library, yeah.
I always vote for that. That's a nice little library.
It's never been approved.
No, I know. It's not my fault. I like libraries.
But that's the only thing that's on the budget.
I was down at the museum the other day, and Ann Piccone's been going through some old information about the establishment of the Amsterdam Free Library, the whole history of libraries in town. And the first library in Amsterdam dates to about 1803, something like that. Incredibly long time ago. But one of the interesting things was when Carnegie came up with the money. The existing library was like a paid library, or a subscription library, and there was this big debate among the leaders of the community, and I'm talking about the social leaders of the community, not necessarily the political leaders, but both. They were both involved in these discussions. Shall we take Carnegie's money? Well, are we certain that that there's a need for the mill hands to be reading books? And how is this going to affect us? Do we want them coming up with these dangerous ideas that they'll get from reading books? And there was actually, I mean, this is like something you'd think they'd make up. Can you stereotype the rich mill owners any worse than that? No, we don't want to we don't want our mill hands educated, then they're not going to be able to. They're going to want better jobs and better working conditions.
It's just like the Catholic Church printing the Bible from Latin into English. They were opposed to that because then the masses would have access to it, and you wouldn't have to have somebody there explaining what we want to explain.
Well, that's one theory. The other is it's just the usual inertia. What the language changed? What, you don't know what they're talking about?
Well, yeah, it's amazing, and that they would be afraid to have educated masses. The one thing came up at the board meeting. Bobby Noto did a little presentation.
And what's he do now?
He's retired.
What did he do?
He was the athletic and phys ed teacher and coach at Amsterdam High School.
Okay.
And
That was for the benefit of you people.
didn't know Bobby Noto, our neighbor down here.
Yeah.
He brought up the idea of creating a Amsterdam Sports Hall of Fame, because many communities have.
The Common Council of the City of Amsterdam adopted such a resolution establishing an Amsterdam Sports Hall of Fame in 1986.
No, we don't have an Amsterdam High
I
School
know.
Sports Hall of Fame.
No one's ever been introduced into it, apparently.
So he brought that up, and it is, and because every school you go to
Yeah,
has their Sports Hall of Fame.
right.
You know, we have trophies at the high school. You know,
Sure.
From marching Rams to
Right.
the theater to the chorus. We've got, trophy cases back by the gym that have, the Big
Right.
Ten trophies and stuff. But to recognize athletes from the community who graduate from Amsterdam High School is what they're looking to do. So that's going to be something that's going to be a committee put together, and they'll come up with that.
You ain't going to have enough room on the Hall of Fame walls for some of the athletes that came out of this town, I'll tell you.
It's gonna, they're going to have to. They'll set the criteria, and they'll have to initially pick from different eras. There'll be a pre World War II, and then from World War II up to 1970, and then start working on the recent ones, because you're right that we did have a lot of great athletes on this.
Doing my research for my book, Where Do We Find Such Men, available at the Old Peddler's Wagon at the Five Corners and at the Bookhound downtown and on Amazon.com and at the Walter Elwood Museum and the County Archives in Fonda. I came across story after story of these incredible athletes that came out of Amsterdam, both Amsterdam High and St. Mary's. Both schools had mind-boggling athletes going simultaneously. And in all sports. Costa Lazaro, every sport. Whatever. If they were making up a sport tomorrow, he'd be the best there was in it. Of course, Roger Bauman, the pitcher, played in the major leagues, and Joe Kuchek, and played. Well, had one at bat in the major leagues, but one after another, and then you had. You go on and on.
So anyhow,
I don't want to leave anybody out. Ralph Fagullo and Tony Fabosi and Maynard Baker, all the same era. Porky Blanchfield, Dutch Holland, who played minor league ball, and so did Bob Seiss.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So we'll see how
they didn't
that
all
goes.
go to the high school though.
No, they didn't all go to high school. I can remember when the Rug Makers and Textiles were playing. We went up one night to the game, and my dad said, there's a scout here from one of the major league teams. They're looking at Mark Alexander. He played. He's either the second baseman or shortstop. He's playing for the Rug Makers, and I said, "Oh, that's neat. You know who it is?" He says, "Well, I think it's one of the guys out there, but I'm not sure which one it is." And Alexander had a tremendous year. I think he had 3 errors in the first 2 innings. You couldn't have been scouted at a worse game. He flubbed a regular ground ball. He made a bad throw, and it just wasn't a good night. But I can remember when they used to have the tryouts. They'd bring a bunch of scouts in, and they'd have a tryout day up there, and all the locals would come out and.
Dutch used to scout for the Mets, maybe, or
no? He scouted for Cubs or White Sox, I think. I think I have to ask Joe what it, but it wasn't the Mets. It was somebody that'd been around before.
Well, he had. By the time I was in high school, he'd given up the baseball, and Jack Davey was a baseball coach.
Yeah.
Ran into Jack last night, by the way. He looks great. He produced a lot of athletes for your school, even if he didn't go there himself.
Yeah, he did.
Jeez. Now we're the next generation, and they're still pouring out.
Stanoviches.
Oh my God. Anyway, so Jack was a baseball coach, so we didn't see Dutch at the baseball games, but I remember him coming up once. I said, "Oh, what are you doing, coach?" He said, well, he was scouting the other team. He wanted to see how good this ball player was on the team we were playing, so he could put us. And of course, Alex Isabel before him was coach or a scout for the Dodgers. And
didn't Donnie Safran get scouted and maybe for one of the minor leagues? He went. Remember Donnie? He was a shortstop, big, tall, lanky. It was Teddy Safran's brother, older brother.
I remember Tom Safran.
Yeah, Tommy. He was our age. Donnie was older. Donnie had to be,
or Thom, as we call him.
6 years, maybe about 6 years, 7 years older than we were. Well, yeah, Tommy was a really good athlete.
Oh yeah.
I can remember when we were in school. There was a big controversy about him and Buddy Flesh.
Right.
That they wanted to bring them up to the varsity, and they were junior high kids.
And you always spoke with them in the same sentence.
Oh yeah.
So it was always Buddy Flesh, Tom Safran.
Yeah.
The Tom Safran, Buddy Flesh.
Yeah. They were just killing.
But he spelled Tom Thon. That's
yeah.
why we naturally went to the school. We made fun of him. Thom.
Yeah. But that was a big deal. They were so good.
They were good ball players.
Yeah. Tommy had that little soft shot. And Buddy Flesh, I remember when they had Sid Edwards came up with Linton, and he was they just stomped him up here. Flesh just was all over him, and I don't know if he got a handful of points or something, but he was a lefty. Remember, he played CYO. He played CYO for St. Stan's in not Stan's. What's a church in Hageman?
Stevens.
St. Stephen's. He played for St. Stephen's. Him and Butchie Farrell. And it was one of those games that we played. It was 65-4 or something like that. And he at halftime's going. The bus is going off at halftime, and he takes a half court shot. Now St. John's court wasn't a full size court, but nonetheless he fires it up from half court.
I don't even know how you could take a half court shot from there. The ceiling was so low, or you bounce it off the ceiling. A double carom.
He threw it up and went in. We need this, right? We don't have any points, and he's scoring from half court. But
well, the one good thing about the CYO league, at least all the great players weren't on the same team.
They like by church. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, because Saf played, him and Rick Beam played for St. John's. They went to St. John's Church, and Buddy was St. Stephen's. And
we've got down at the museum on one of our posters, we have a photograph. I don't know, it's almost 2 hours. Photograph of I guess a CYO tournament team. It was a St. Casimir's team, and they had just won like the regional thing. And some of the guys in the photograph look familiar, but two are absolutely jump out at you. One is Timmy Kaloje, and the other one is Jack Kaloje. And Tim was All-American playing for Amsterdam High, and Jack was a pretty darn good ball player playing for St. Mary's at the same time. I forget if they're the same age or a year apart. They were first cousins. And they looked exactly the same, only they're like 8th graders in this picture. So it's got to be, like 1960 or something like that.
I think the best thing the recorder has done is put that sports, because last week or the week before they had a thing in there about Bill Personas. I didn't realize he scored 1,000 points.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I remember he was. I remember I went down to watch him play, and it's like.
Well, he was playing varsity as a freshman. Or at least at the end of the year he came up, and by the time he was a sophomore, he was starting. Yeah. He was a great ball player.
Yeah, and then and after him, the big guy was Hugo. Came up. He was the big center. Yeah. That was just before we went to Scully to play.
And Dave played on actually, they played above their level when he was on the team because they weren't expected to do much of anything. When he was a junior, they had a so-so team. By the time he was a senior, they had pulled it all together. Even though they didn't have they didn't have the Jack Davies and the Danny Krzyzewskis and such anymore, but or Bersonis, but or Jack Kaloje, but they put together a fairly decent team. And trying to think, they were playing St. Dominic's of Oyster Bay in a tournament, and St. Dominic's had a guy who went pro.
Riker.
Yeah.
Tom Riker.
Yes.
He played for North Carolina.
Yeah.
He was a stud.
And I mean, this was they always invited St. Dominic's up because there were pushovers. Well, not then, not that year. Dave was playing with a broken foot, and I think they had to give him a cortisone shot or a Novocaine shot or something, and he held him at least through the first half, and he finally couldn't play anymore.
Yeah, they had some real good teams come up then. And we used to, in that tournament, you just have diocesan league teams too, not just parochial teams. Like they had the Cardinal McCluskey, which is a diocesan team, or Vincent VI, which is a diocesan team. It wasn't a parochial league team, and they brought some high-quality teams up here. But Tom Riker was the guy from Oyster Bay, and he went to, I think it was North Carolina State. North Carolina State was a red team, so it had to be North Carolina State. North Carolina's a blue.
You remember the color of the team he played on?
In college? Oh, yeah. Wow. And he was real good. He was a big kid. He was probably about 6'4", and he was built like Hugo.
I think he was more like 6'7". I think,
but he was like Hugo. I mean, Dave was a big guy.
Dave I think was 6'5", 6'6".
Was he?
Yeah, he was really that big.
Which I still see him.
And he was
he married Bialabach.
Huh?
He married Diane Bialabach.
Danielle Bialabach. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Still married to her.
She used to teach up in Brett Albin.
And that's how I'm related to Joe Bialabach.
Through Danielle?
Yeah, through Danielle. Through Dave. Dave is my third cousin.
He is.
Yeah, his grandmother was a Goen.
Yeah? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I had to stop and think.
More branches on the family tree.
Yeah, he's a legitimate relative. He's a legitimate blood relative. And my friend on Facebook. Good guy. He's always been a good guy.
Yeah. They had some good teams all the way around.
By the way, a couple of weeks ago we mentioned Philip Tambasco on the show, and we also mentioned Mickey LaCopla on the show. And
I saw Mickey this morning.
And they were so thrilled to have their names mentioned that we mentioned their names.
On the show? I saw Mickey this morning.
So I'm mentioning them again just so they can be thrilled.
He said, "You doing the show today?" I said, "Yeah, we're going to be doing the show today." I said, I like listening to those.
Oh, I'm sure he's disappointed he missed Tuesday's show because
that was a good show.
That was a good show.
You can't put lightning back in the jar, though.
Oh. And circumstances changed since then, but I'll tell you, it was so spontaneous. It was.
Well, it really wasn't. It was all programmed by the producer.
Yeah.
We're just so good. It sounds like it's spontaneous.
Thing is, we've been doing this for 3 years, 3 years plus now, so we know each other well enough. We know when to pass off and when to.
Absolutely.
Gavin can take a pass behind the back as well as anybody.
You do all right.
Ernie Gregorio.
Ernie D. And who was the center on that team? There's Ernie D. and Bad News Marvin Bonds was the.
I only remember Ernie D.
Oh, yeah. And Billy Cowbell was the guard for St. Bonaventure when Bob Lanier was the center. Billy Cowbell was from Troy. Same idea. Little guards, big guys up front.
What happened to Ernie D? He played ABA, didn't he?
He played pro. He didn't last very long. Can you? All right.
I remember him throwing that, passing the ball behind his back, almost the length of the court, and it was during it had to be during the NCAA tournament.
Went right to Marvin Barnes.
Oh man.
Do you realize that when we were
impressionable
in high school students, it might have been, I think it was your junior year, my sophomore year, that there was 3 college players, Rick Mount, Calvin Murphy, and Pete Maravich, all averaged over 40 points a game without a 3-point shot.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
And Maravich averaged over 40 points a game for his three varsity seasons. He's the all-time leading scorer in college basketball. And you see these scores, and there's no three-point shot. They're all two-point shots. And
Pistol Pete was
oh,
freaking unbelievable.
He was.
Didn't his father coach him in the pros as well?
Press Maravich, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he coached him in college, and then
I think he coached him for a year in the pros.
Yeah, I think
his
so.
dad wasn't a good pro coach, but the funny thing I remember, it was for the 60s.
And Calvin Murphy was short.
Yeah, he's 5'10".
Yeah,
He could dunk it. In 1968, for the Olympics, they used to have they'd invite these guys, and they had a tryout for the team, and Maravich didn't make the team. But they showed the scrimmage games that they played. He must have hit 5 of his teammates in the face with a ball, because they were not used to playing with him. And the passes that he threw, I mean, they couldn't handle him. And he didn't make the team, But he was the Harlem Globetrotter on a college court. I mean, the stuff that he could do. His goal, and he never achieved it.
He died, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He died of a heart attack playing pickup basketball, that pickup game. His goal, and he never achieved it either in college or the pros, was to come down on a fast break, throw the ball up, and head it into the goal. He never did that. But there weren't many other shots he didn't make when he was in there. I mean,
and it's not that he couldn't make them; he just didn't have the opportunity.
Never had after, and he played with those white floppy socks.
I'd bench him if he tried a shot like that, even if I was his father.
But he was fantastic. I mean, he had moves that
I remember Murphy. Calvin Murphy played for Niagara.
Yes, he did.
Is that a Jesuit school or it's Catholic?
Well, that's where Father Barry went.
Yeah.
He was from Niagara.
Yeah. Anyway, and remember somebody saying to me, he says, boy, whoever heard of a black guy named Murphy? I said, let alone a Catholic named Calvin.
Oh, that's good. he might have been 0 for 2 on that. You don't know.
I might have been. Yeah.
he may not have been either of those. But he was a national champion. But what was he a national champion in?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Baton twirling.
Stop it.
He was a national champion baton twirler. He could do all those things, and he did it at halftime one of the pro games, because he played for the Houston Rockets, and he came out at halftime one day and he did those. He was a national champion.
He played with Lanier, didn't he?
No, Lanier was St. Bonaventure.
No, and didn't he play? Didn't Lanier play for Houston?
No, Lanier played for Detroit. He played with Dave.
Who played for Houston? Who was the big guy who played for Houston? That's right. Yeah, the Lanier did play for Detroit. He was at Bonaventure and went to Detroit.
Yeah.
Same era as Alcindor.
Yeah.
Who the heck was it?
Oh, Bob Hayes.
Bob Hayes. Did he play with him?
Murphy. Yeah, Calvin played with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
See, we brought up. It started out with sports.
Yeah,
and
we ended up with sports.
We ended up with sports. Came full circle.
But in between.
Oh, what a show!
What a show!
No name for this show today.
All right, so we'll be back with the radio program on Tuesday. Should be a humdinger, I would think.
Yeah,
and,
I saw some of the preview of the topics. It's going to be one of our best shows.
Am I producing this week, or are you producing?
You are again.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're producing on all the even days.
I'm not sure about that. In any event, we'll be back Tuesday with the radio program. Hopefully we'll be able to video it this time. And we'll be back again next Friday, I think. If I got something on next Friday, I forget.
We'll see. But we'll be there Tuesday.
Anyway, so that's it. I'm Bob Going with Gavin Murdoch, and we'll be back with more of the show with no name.